I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Tyler, and my life turned upside down around the time I hit my 30s. I had a decent job as a business consultant, a beautiful wife named Rachel who worked as a marketing executive, and we had been married for nearly a decade. It was the kind of relationship you brag about to your friends, funny, passionate, and seemingly perfect on the surface. But as it turned out, all that glitters is not gold. The first signs of trouble came in subtle whispers. Rachel started coming home late from work more often. At first, I brushed it off as just the demands of her job. She was ambitious, and I admired that about her. However, I noticed small shifts. She became more secretive about her phone, often texting with her head turned away from me. Little things like that began to gnaw at me. I remember one evening when I asked her if she wanted to grab dinner together and she snapped back, "I have plans, Tyler." With an edge I hadn't heard in a long time. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had a business partner, Mark, who had been a close friend of mine for years. We started our consulting firm together and I trusted him with my life, or so I thought. There were moments when I sensed a tension between Rachel and Mark. They seemed to share a connection at our company gatherings that felt off. My gut screamed at me, but I brushed it aside. After all, they were just colleagues. Yet, the feeling lingered, like a dark cloud on the horizon. Everything spiraled one fateful evening when I decided to surprise Rachel with dinner. I got home early, and as I walked into the house, I noticed her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. My curiosity got the better of me. I glanced down and saw a text from Mark. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. You'll love what I've planned." Just like that, the floor dropped out from under me. I felt sick, like the air had been punched out of my lungs. The reality of what I was reading hit me like a freight train. I confronted her that night. I was shaking with rage and betrayal, my voice barely above a whisper as I said, "Rachel, I saw the texts." Her reaction was not the one I expected. Instead of guilt or remorse, she became defensive, her eyes narrowing as she spat back. "You're being ridiculous, Tyler. That's just business talk, you know how he is." I remember feeling disbelief wash over me, drowning out everything else. I thought I had been a good husband. I supported her career, encouraged her ambitions, and I never once questioned her loyalty until that moment. Rachel's excuses were flimsy at best, but she spun them with such conviction that for a brief moment I started to doubt my own sanity. It felt like I was the villain in my own marriage, and she was the wronged party. As I processed the confrontation, a whirlwind of emotions engulfed me: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw things. I felt like I was losing control of everything I cared about. I thought about our life together, the plans we made, and how easily they could be shattered by one person's deceit. In the following days, I oscillated between anger and despair. I couldn't sleep or eat. I kept replaying that moment over and over in my head, trying to find clarity in the chaos. I considered walking away from Rachel, but there was a part of me that still wanted to believe in what we had. I deeply loved her, and the thought of ending my marriage felt like severing a part of my soul. But then there was Mark, my so-called friend, the man who had betrayed my trust. It made my blood boil. I knew I had to make a decision, and it needed to be decisive. I couldn't stand by and let the people I cared about ruin my life. I took a deep breath and began to lay out my plan. I needed to regain control, not just of my life, but of my finances, my business, and my future. I wanted revenge, but more importantly, I wanted to ensure that Rachel and Mark wouldn't benefit from the life we had built together. I started thinking about what steps I could take to cut her out of the profits of the business we had built together, to ensure that their deceit wouldn't pay off. They thought they could get away with this, but they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Part of me felt a rush of power at the thought of taking control. I wasn't just going to roll over and let them walk all over me. I was going to reclaim what was mine. The following days were a blur of planning and plotting. My mind raced as I weighed the options before me. I had always prided myself on being a rational thinker, but this was different. I was fueled by a burning desire for retribution, which made every decision feel more profound. I started to gather evidence of Rachel's infidelity, not just to confront her again, but to use it as leverage in our business and personal lives. I scoured through old emails, text messages, and even went through my own phone records to find any incriminating evidence. I found myself growing more strategic every day. It was almost like a game to me. The stakes were high, but I was determined to win. I began documenting everything meticulously, creating a timeline of events that would not just expose the affair, but would also showcase how intertwined our lives had become with our business. We had built this consulting firm from the ground up, and I wasn't about to let betrayal tear it apart or let my soon-to-be ex-wife benefit from my hard work. I started making changes at the office too. I had been considering restructuring our business for a while, and now it felt like the perfect opportunity to take decisive action. I began to implement new policies that would add layers of protection to my side of the business, ensuring that Rachel would no longer have access to any profits. I consulted with a lawyer, laying the groundwork for what was sure to be a complicated divorce. My first meeting with the lawyer was eye-opening. It was bitterly ironic to sit in a sterile office discussing how to dismantle a marriage I once thought was solid. I laid out the facts, the affair, the emotional turmoil, and the potential financial implications. The lawyer nodded thoughtfully, suggesting ways to safeguard my business and personal assets. She made it clear that I had every right to protect myself against a partner who had broken our vows. The more I heard, the more empowered I felt. I wasn't just a victim, I was also a man who had options. Meanwhile, Rachel remained blissfully unaware of my new direction. She had her own delusions about love, fidelity, and the idea that I would just accept her infidelity and let it slide. I played the part of the dutiful husband, attending events together, and even going through the motions of a couple working through their issues. My heart raced every time Mark came near me, but I hid my disdain behind a mask of civility. I knew I had to keep my composure. The element of surprise would be on my side. I even invited Mark over for dinner one Saturday night, a move that felt like a calculated risk. Rachel was thrilled, excitedly chatting about the plans she had for their latest work project. I could see the spark in her eyes, the excitement that had once been reserved for our life together. It made my blood boil, but I remained calm, maintaining my facade as the supportive husband. When Mark arrived, I greeted him with an overly warm smile, welcoming him into my home. I made sure to pour drinks and engage him in conversation, all while keeping an eye on Rachel's reaction. It was sickening to watch them banter, their chemistry practically oozing off them. I felt like I was trapped in some twisted reality show, watching my life unravel in front of me. As the evening wore on, I made small talk, asking about work and subtly steering the conversation toward our business strategy. I observed Mark's responses closely. He was comfortable and confident, and I couldn't help but wonder how many secrets he and Rachel had shared behind my back. But I smiled, nodding along, feigning interest while internally I was plotting my revenge. After dinner, as they both enjoyed a drink on the patio, I excused myself and went inside. I couldn't stand to watch them anymore. I grabbed my laptop and began drafting an email to our clients, outlining some new business initiatives that I intended to pursue in the upcoming weeks. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was working harder than ever to secure my future while making plans to cut Rachel out entirely. That night, I initiated the real changes at the office. I scheduled a meeting with all our employees, announcing a new company structure that would essentially limit Rachel's influence on our operations. I also made clear my intent to handle all the financial decisions moving forward. The team had always respected me, and I could see how they were caught off guard by Rachel's sudden shift in position. There was murmuring among the ranks, and I could feel my confidence growing. As I moved forward, I didn't forget the emotional toll this was taking on me. It was exhausting to juggle the feelings of betrayal with my desire for vengeance. I had moments where I felt hollow, where I questioned if this was truly who I was. I hated who Rachel had become, but I also mourned the relationship I once cherished. However, every time I felt weak or uncertain, I simply reminded myself of the affair. That one text message had changed everything, revealing a truth I couldn't ignore. I was determined not just to survive this betrayal, but to emerge from it stronger and more in control than I had ever been before. As I continued to put my plan into action, my resolve solidified. I was on a mission, and there was no going back. Rachel and Mark thought they could get away with this, but they had no idea what was coming for them. The game was on, and I was ready to play to win. With my plan set in motion, I felt a rush of adrenaline that I hadn't experienced in years. The taste of revenge was intoxicating, and every time I stepped into the office, I was filled with a newfound sense of purpose. I started restructuring the business, implementing changes that would cut Rachel out of the profits. I also began to approach our clients individually, establishing deeper relationships while subtly hinting at my intentions for the firm's direction without her influence. What struck me was how easily the team began to rally around me. They had always respected my leadership, but now there was a palpable sense of loyalty as they watched Rachel's power erode. I could see the shift in their attitudes as they started to question her decisions and her place in our shared enterprise. When Rachel would come into the office, she'd flash her usual smile, but I noticed the nervous glances exchanged between her and the staff. It was as if they were witnessing a power struggle that had become increasingly uncomfortable. In private, Rachel's facade began to crack. I remember one particularly tense evening when she confronted me after a long day. "You're pushing me out of the company, aren't you?" she said, her voice laced with anger. It was the first time she had acknowledged the changes I was making. I simply shrugged and replied, "I'm just doing what's best for the business." The look on her face was one of disbelief mixed with growing apprehension, and I reveled in it. The emotional toll of all this was exhausting, but I kept reminding myself that every decision I made was in pursuit of reclaiming my life. I still had moments of doubt and sadness. Some nights, I'd lay awake, going over happy memories of us, but then I'd think of the betrayal and how she had dismantled everything we had built. That was my motivation to keep pushing forward. As the weeks went by, I started to put more pieces of my revenge plan into place. I contacted a divorce lawyer and started laying down the groundwork for a separation that would be as clean as possible for me. I knew Rachel would fight it. After all, she had a lot to lose, and I needed to prepare myself for an impending battle. But I had already made my peace with the idea of ending our marriage. I was ready to cut ties entirely, especially if it meant I would no longer have to deal with her lies and deceit. The most satisfying moment came when I discovered that Mark was planning a team-building event where he had invited Rachel and a few other employees to spend the weekend at his cabin. It was meant to be a bonding experience, but to me, it felt like a clear signal that they were continuing their affair right under my nose. I decided to turn this information into a weapon. I knew I had to confront them both, but I wanted it to be on my terms when I was prepared. I started gathering more evidence, collecting texts and emails to paint a picture of their relationship for the divorce proceedings. I wanted to ensure that there was no question of Rachel's infidelity when it came time to divide our assets. I secured my financial future, and now it was just a matter of timing. The day of the planned event at Mark's cabin arrived. I made sure to keep tabs on Rachel's whereabouts. I knew she would be excited, thinking it was just a weekend getaway with colleagues. As she left the house that morning, her smile made me feel sick, but I pushed that feeling down. I had a plan, and I was going to execute it flawlessly. I decided to drive to the cabin, setting out just a few hours after Rachel had left. I wanted to arrive once the festivities were in full swing. I parked my car a good distance away, making sure I wouldn't be spotted immediately. My heart raced as I approached the cabin, and I could hear laughter and music wafting through the trees. The thought of confronting them sent a wave of adrenaline coursing through me, and I felt both exhilarated and terrified. As I crept closer, I spotted Rachel and Mark on the deck, laughing together over drinks. The sight made my stomach churn. I waited for the right moment, hovering on the outskirts until I saw them move inside, followed by a few others. I slipped quietly onto the deck, slipping through the door which led into the main room. The living space was alive with chatter and laughter, and I took a moment to collect myself before stepping into their line of sight. As I entered, the room fell silent, all eyes on me. Rachel's expression shifted from surprise to a mix of embarrassment and anger. I looked straight at Mark, who immediately stiffened, his face paling. "Surprise," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I thought I'd come join the party." Rachel rushed toward me, a frantic look on her face. "What are you doing here, Tyler? You weren't invited," she exclaimed, her facade crumbling. "I wasn't invited. I thought this was a company event," I shot back, keeping my tone steady. It's funny how things change when the boss is around. The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel the weight of their guilt hanging in the air, and I reveled in it. "Tyler, this isn't what you think," Rachel tried to explain, but I cut her off. "No. Then what is it, Rachel? Because it certainly looks like you and Mark have been enjoying each other's company quite a lot." The room was silent, and I could see the realization dawn on her face that she had been caught. Before she could respond, I turned to the group. "I'm sorry for crashing the party, but I think it's important for everyone to know the truth about who they're working with." I looked at Mark and added, "Don't you agree, Mark?" Mark stammered, trying to find the right words as I felt the power shift in my favor. Rachel's face flushed, and I could see her panic rising as she grasped the implications of my presence. "I think it's time we all had a little chat," I said, my tone low and firm. It was time to expose the truth and reclaim my life once and for all. As the silence lingered in the cabin, I felt a surge of confidence wash over me. This was my moment to confront the betrayal head-on and put everything I had learned into action. I could see the tension on Rachel's and Mark's faces, like deer caught in headlights, and I knew it was time to expose their deceit. "Let's not play games," I began, addressing the group. "I know what's been happening between Rachel and Mark. You can laugh and pretend like everything is fine, but the truth is out, and it's time to face it." My voice was steady, each word cutting through the air like a knife. Rachel started to protest, her face twisting in indignation. "Tyler, this is ridiculous. You don't have any proof," she said, her voice rising. "Oh, I have proof," I replied, pulling out my phone and scrolling through the messages I had collected. "Text messages, emails, it's all here. I've documented everything." I watched as Rachel's face drained of color while Mark's jaw clenched tight. The other employees stood around, unsure of how to react, but I could see their interest peaking, some whispering amongst themselves. I knew I had their attention, and I was going to make sure they understood the truth. "Rachel, do you think this is the kind of behavior that reflects well on you, on this company? Do you really think you can betray your husband and expect to keep your job without consequences?" I stepped closer, forcing her to face the reality she had tried to hide. "What do you want from me, Tyler?" She snapped back, her composure cracking. "You're making a scene. I want the truth." "Rachel, I want you to admit what you've done, not just to me but to everyone here," I said, gesturing to our employees. "It's time you stop lying to yourself and everyone else. You think your affair is something you can keep hidden, but it's affecting all of us. You're putting our business at risk." Mark finally spoke up, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Tyler, I think you should leave. This isn't how you handle things." "Appropriate," he said, trying to sound authoritative but failing miserably. I looked at him, a smirk creeping onto my face. "Inappropriate. You've been sleeping with my wife and you think I'm the one who's out of line. You're the one who should be ashamed, Mark. You've crossed a line that's unforgivable, and now you're going to face the consequences." The tension was thick, and I could feel the eyes of our employees on us, taking in the unfolding drama. I pressed on, knowing I had to make this moment count. "This isn't just about our marriage. It's about trust and loyalty in this business. I've poured my heart and soul into building this company, and I won't let you destroy it with your selfishness." Rachel's composure finally began to crumble. "You don't understand. This is complicated," she shouted, her voice quivering. "I've felt trapped for so long, and Mark, he understands me." "Understanding you isn't an excuse for infidelity, Rachel," I shot back. "You could have come to me, we could have talked about it. But instead, you chose to betray me. You chose to destroy our marriage and everything we built together." Taking a deep breath, I decided to shift gears. I had to ensure that Rachel and Mark understood the gravity of their actions, not just emotionally but financially. You know what? This is more than personal. I'm going to take steps to ensure you're both held accountable. I'm starting the process of a divorce, Rachel. You'll get nothing from me, not a penny of the profits or shares of this business. You'll be cut out completely. Her eyes widened in shock, and I could see the realization set in. You can't do this, she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. You're being irrational. You'll regret this decision. I shook my head, a sense of relief coursing through me. No, Rachel, I won't regret it. You've already made your choices, and now I'm making mine. Enjoy your weekend with Mark because it's about to become the last one you'll have in this company. Mark looked flustered, trying to find his footing in the chaos. Tyler, this isn't the way to handle your personal issues. We can talk about this like adults, he said, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I held up my hand to stop him. No more talking, Mark. The actions you've taken are inexcusable, and I won't let you maneuver your way out of this. You've done enough damage. With that, I turned to leave, ready to walk out of the cabin and take back what was mine. As I stepped out onto the deck, I could feel the weight of their gazes on my back. The mix of pity and disbelief from my employees was palpable. I knew this would have ramifications, not just for Rachel and Mark, but for the entire company. I walked away from that cabin with a sense of empowerment. I was reclaiming my life and my business, and I was finally breaking free from the chains Rachel had tried to wrap around me. The emotional burden was still present, but I felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Driving home, my mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. I had put my plan into action, but now I had to prepare for the fallout. I wasn't naive enough to think that Rachel and Mark would take my decisions lying down. I knew there would be a battle ahead, but I was ready to face it. I had learned that standing up for myself was the only way to move forward. The journey to reclaim my life had just begun, and I was more determined than ever to ensure that I emerged from this stronger, wiser, and free from the shackles of betrayal. I was ready to fight for what was mine, and I would not let Rachel or Mark take that away from me. After that explosive confrontation at the cabin, things spiraled quickly. I spent the next week preparing myself for the inevitable fallout. I had contacted my lawyer again, detailing everything that had transpired. She encouraged me to file for divorce immediately, which I did. The paperwork stung more than I expected. It was a reminder of everything I'd lost. Yet it also felt liberating. I was taking control of my life, and I wasn't going to allow Rachel or Mark to dictate my future any longer. I started to notice a shift in the office atmosphere. Employees I once considered friends began to tread lightly around me, and the tension was palpable. Many of them had witnessed the fallout of my marriage, and it was clear that gossip was swirling. I could feel their eyes on me, and while it was unsettling, I used it to my advantage. I channeled that energy into focusing on the business. I wanted to show them that I was more than capable of leading without Rachel, and I would emerge stronger from this chaos. Rachel, on the other hand, was spiraling. She tried to reach out, sending numerous texts and voicemails filled with apologies and pleas for us to talk. She would say things like, "We can work this out, Tyler. I love you. I made a mistake." I didn't reply, not a single time. I knew better than to engage with her emotional manipulation. She was trying to rope me back in, but I wasn't falling for it. If anything, her attempts only solidified my resolve to cut her out of my life completely. Instead, I poured myself into work, holding meetings with clients and brainstorming new strategies for the firm. I wanted to show everyone that I was still the dependable leader they'd always known. I began developing new projects, ones that didn't involve Rachel at all. The more I distanced myself from her influence, the more liberated I felt. The day that Rachel was officially served divorce papers was a turning point. I had instructed my lawyer to do so carefully, making sure Rachel would receive the documents without any ambiguity. When she called me later that day, her voice was cold, a stark contrast to the frantic tone of her previous messages. "How could you do this, Tyler? You're ruining everything," she shouted, her anger palpable through the phone. "I'm not ruining anything, Rachel. You made your choices." "This is your consequence," I replied, my voice steady. It felt good to finally stand my ground. You can't expect me to just forget about the affair. You've betrayed me and I won't let that go unaddressed. Her response was filled with regret, but I could hear the desperation in her voice. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake. We can fix this, I promise. No, Rachel, this isn't about fixing anything. This is about moving on. You've shown me who you truly are, and I refuse to let that person back into my life, I said, hanging up before she could respond. As the divorce proceedings continued, I found myself in a strange mix of emotions. I still felt sadness over what we had lost, but it was overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of pride. I was reclaiming my life, and I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I had learned that I was capable of standing up for myself and demanding respect. The aftermath of the affair began to ripple through the company. Employees started to ask questions. Many were concerned about the future of the business, while others whispered about Rachel and Mark's relationship. I decided to address the elephant in the room during our next all-hands meeting. I wanted to be transparent with my team, too. Show them I was still in control. Thank you all for coming in today. I know things have been a bit chaotic lately. I started, feeling the weight of their gazes upon me. I want to assure you that despite the recent changes, our firm is moving forward. We're going to grow, and I'm committed to making sure we all succeed together. There was a mixture of relief and uncertainty in the room. I continued, Rachel and I are going through a divorce, and while that's personal, I want you to know it won't affect the work we do here. I value each of you, and I'm dedicated to our mission. I could see nods of approval from some, while others still looked uneasy. I knew it would take time for everyone to adjust to the changes, but I was determined to prove that our business was resilient and would thrive despite personal turmoil. As the weeks passed, I started receiving support from unexpected places. Employees began to step up, taking on additional responsibilities to ensure everything continued to run smoothly. It felt good to know that they believed in me, and I made sure to recognize their efforts. I even organized a small team-building event to boost morale, something I had neglected during the chaos of my personal life. In the midst of all this, the reality of Rachel's betrayal started to sink in. I was processing the emotional fallout, but I also began to reflect on the lessons I had learned. I realized that I had let her manipulate and control parts of my life for far too long. The affair had stripped away the illusions I had held about our marriage, forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, loyalty, and self-worth. Despite the pain, I was beginning to see this as an opportunity for growth. I had rediscovered my strength and resilience, and I was ready to embrace a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I focused on my goals, my happiness, and building a future free from betrayal. The divorce was still ongoing, and I knew there would be battles ahead, but I was ready for them. I realized that I had the power to shape my own destiny, and I wouldn't let anyone, especially not Rachel or Mark, take that away from me. I was reclaiming my life not just for myself, but for every aspect of my future, and I was determined to make it count. As I reflected on the journey I had taken so far, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to move forward, to build a business and a life that I could be proud of. I was done being a victim. It was time to embrace the warrior within me. As the weeks rolled on, I found a rhythm. The divorce proceedings were grueling but necessary. I had moments of doubt, fleeting thoughts of whether I had made the right decision, but they were quickly overshadowed by the strength I had cultivated. I was moving forward, and with each passing day, I felt lighter, more empowered. I was shedding the weight of my past and stepping into a new future. I continued to navigate the complexities of running the business and managing relationships with clients. I worked closely with my team, encouraging collaboration and innovation. The atmosphere in the office transformed. People were engaged, and I could sense a renewed spirit among the staff. It was as if they were rallying behind me, eager to contribute and support one another. In the wake of the chaos, as the divorce approached its final stages, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew that facing Rachel in court would be one of the toughest moments of my life. Despite everything, she was still someone I had loved deeply. The memories we shared, the dreams we had built together, echoed in my mind. But I had to remind myself that love didn't excuse her betrayal. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I walked into the building with my lawyer by my side. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I took a deep breath, reminding myself of everything I had endured. This was the final step in reclaiming my life, and I was determined to face it head-on. The courtroom was intimidating, filled with a hushed tension. When Rachel walked in, I felt a rush of emotions. She looked different, more polished, perhaps trying to present herself in the best light. But even as she sat down, I could see the cracks beneath her facade. She was scared, and I could sense it. As the proceedings began, I listened as my lawyer laid out the details of our case. She spoke of my contributions to the business, the impact Rachel's actions had on my life, and the reasons I sought a clean break. I maintained my composure, even when Rachel's lawyer attempted to cast me in a negative light. It was a battle of narratives, and I was resolute in presenting the truth. When it was finally Rachel's turn to speak, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. She took the stand and painted a picture of our marriage that was skewed. She tried to evoke sympathy, claiming she had been unhappy and felt pushed into Mark's arms. Listening to her was painful. I could feel old wounds reopening. But I reminded myself that I was no longer that man, no longer willing to accept her version of our reality. When she finished, I was given the opportunity to respond. I stood up, steadying myself as I faced her. "Rachel," I began, "I loved you and I still care about the good times we had, but I can't ignore what you've done. You made a choice to betray not just me, but the very foundation of our life together. This isn't about our happiness anymore. It's about accountability." As I spoke, I could see her composure falter. I detailed the pain of betrayal, the struggle of navigating through the aftermath, and how her decisions had forced us to this point. I wanted to make it clear. I was taking back control of my life, and I wouldn't allow her betrayal to define me any longer. When the hearing concluded, I felt a weight lift off me. I had spoken my truth, and no matter the outcome, I was proud of how I had handled myself. I was ready to move on, to embrace whatever came next. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized. I walked out of the courthouse with a sense of freedom that I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer tied to someone who had betrayed my trust in the most profound way. I was ready to focus on myself, on the business, and the life I wanted to build. In the following months, I threw myself into work. I expanded the firm, took on new clients, and found ways to innovate. My team continued to thrive, and I could see that the investment I had made into creating a positive work environment was paying off. We built a culture of collaboration and respect, and I was proud to be leading this new chapter. Along the way, I started to rediscover myself. I took up new hobbies, spent time with friends, and even began dating again. It was a slow process, but I learned to open my heart little by little. I met people who shared my interests, and slowly, I found joy in the little things again. One evening, while out with friends, I met a woman named Sarah. She was vibrant and kind, and there was an instant connection between us. I took things slow, wary of opening myself up too soon, but Sarah understood. She respected my past while encouraging me to look toward the future. Our bond grew, and I found myself laughing and enjoying life again. Reflecting on the journey I had taken, I realized that the betrayal had been a catalyst for transformation. It pushed me to confront my fears and to demand respect not just from others, but from myself. I had learned a valuable lesson about resilience and the importance of standing up for what I believed in. In the end, I emerged stronger, having reclaimed my life, my business, and my happiness. I had faced the chaos head-on and learned how to navigate the complexities of love, trust, and betrayal. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I felt ready to face them. And as I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of peace and excitement for the new opportunities that lay ahead. I had turned the page on a painful chapter and was ready to write a new story, one where I was the author of my own happiness.